Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. We're going to be talking about planning for personalization, tips for dev, design, and information architecture. My name is John. I think we're ready to go. There's not a lot of applause or anything like that because everyone's muted. So just another reminder, we have the participant channel, and there's some great things in there. You can say, go faster, go slower, cup of coffee, clap your hands. That's how I'm going to know if I'm doing okay today in lieu of audience participation and feedback. I want to take a second to introduce myself. This is me. This is my brand new LinkedIn photo. I was pretty excited when we took them in the office. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bounteous, and so I lead our internal efforts to make Bounteous a well-known name. We do a lot of great things in the marketing team. We have a great blog post where we write about a ton of different topics, Drupal, Acquia, Google, you name it, we write about it. We've got so many smart people working at Bounteous, and it's our privilege to share that information with everyone. And we just love the solutions that people come up with and the way that they share it. A little bit about me. I've got my Twitter handle there. Feel free to follow me. I'm a dad, digital tinker. I love to make websites. I go to concerts. I love every time I travel for work, I go to a concert in a new city. It's always a fun thing. So I'm really struggling with staying home in my lovely guest room. Background in marketing, analytics, and data. Google Sheets is my favorite thing in the world. I'm ready to go to the hallway and fight anybody who wants to debate Excel versus Sheets. Got a simple test if you know what you're doing in Sheets. We've got VLOOKUP. If you can do that, that's great. If you've got index match, you're a little bit better. And in Excel, we even have the XLOOKUP function. So there's a scale for how well and how deep we get into the functions in Sheets in Excel. I've not tried Airtable, but I'm still going to stick with my Sheets. People always love to throw out fun facts. I like to throw out the opposite. Breakfast is the worst meal of the day. I'm not saying I don't like it. Dinner is the best, lunch is second, and breakfast is just a distant third. I am getting the participation I was hoping for. Tacos are overrated. Got to tell you that. Hand foods, I am not good with hand foods, and so tacos, I mean, they're good, they're great. I'm going to have them, but just a little bit overrated. For fun, I want to tell you about some fun stuff that I do. I have never seen this many people reacting in the chat. It is excellent. For fun, I like to make number puzzles. I've got a couple books, Kinsuko, Sum Search. It's like a word search, but with numbers. And if that doesn't throw you, then you don't spend enough time in Google Sheets. The new one I'm really trying to break out with is 9find.com. Check it out while you're working from home or after you're finished with the work from home hours. Let me tell you a little bit about Bounteous. We've got a bunch of people helping out with the MidCamp. We're a big sponsor, big supporters. It's right in our backyard. We've got 2 offices here in Chicago. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I am in my guest room. So, but a little bit more about Bounteous. We create big picture digital solutions that help leading organizations deliver transformational brand experiences. We really like to focus on that big picture digital solution. So we love talking about what it takes to get to a goal, right? So when we're talking about those digital solutions, what are all the different pieces that make up that process, that project? And for us, the way that we do that is we ensure the smooth flow of data, insights, and interactions across the digital brand experience. So when we talk about that, that can mean a couple of different things. We're experts at making tools talk to each other, just moving data around and getting it to the right place. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about today. But that's also about how we work as a company and across our teams. So we're put together with great teams of dev, design, analytics. We've got the smartest teams, the smartest people that I've ever had the chance to work with. And it's really awesome to work here. When we talk about the work that we do and how we do it, we know that this is hard to do, but that's what we do to help drive transformative results. We're located all over North America, Chicago, Denver. Again, I'm here in Pittsburgh. We just added Wilmington in January, and we also have a fun office up in Toronto. Check us out, learn more about us. But today, what we are here to talk about is personalization. You've probably heard of personalization. It is the buzziest of buzzwords. It goes back a long time. We've been talking about personalization forever. And really, it's kind of interesting the way that people have been talking about personalization. So we can see trends from 2015, 17, 2020. It just keeps coming up and we just keep talking about it. So we're going to talk about something else. I'm not here to tell you today that you should be doing personalization and that you should be doing it today. What I am here to tell you is that if you design and build websites thoughtfully, then personalization will be easier when you're ready. So I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to talk about how we can put together a website in a way that is ready to add personalization to it. And this is always interesting because there's always going to be someone usually after you. When you build a website, you hand it off to the client. Maybe they're the ones that come after you. Maybe they have another agency that they're working with, or maybe there's another dev or designer. Different people are going to be working on the same websites. So what we have are a couple tips in here for how we can thoughtfully put together a website in a way that is going to help everyone else after you. So whether you're having that conversation today about personalization, you're thinking about how you're going to enable personalization on your website, or you're just trying to be a good steward and make a product that is going to be revered and loved by everyone else who gets the chance to work on that website, that's what we're hoping for. I've played many roles in this process. I've been the designer, I've been the website builder. I am coming today as the marketer, as the guy who gets the website and then has to add personalization to it. So I know all of the requests that I put in and ask people to go back and change things and fix things and tweak it so that it's easier for us to do our job. Let's talk a little bit about personalization. Again, I said I'm not going to talk a ton about it or really try to twist your arm about it, but let's talk about the promise of personalization. We know that personalization is great for a lot of different websites. Today we're going to be focusing on the web. We could also get into mobile, email, all of the different experiences can be personalized, but we're talking about today is website personalization. So we know that it's great for sites that have a lot of traffic, right? If we can collect data, use that data to make decisions, we know that we can really do a great job with personalization. Sites that have a lot of content, the Drupal sites with lots of content are really great candidates for adding different types of personalization there. E-commerce websites, hands down, the easiest type of site to add personalization to, and usually the easiest one to prove the return on the investment. Little tweaks making a big difference. You're going to see that a lot on an e-commerce website. We can tie it back to transaction order values, average order values, customer lifetime value. Here's one, sites that are using marketing channels. And again, here's our first chance to test out that participant channel. If you are doing any sort of marketing that involves money or time, right? So someone on your team or your company is putting money into running ads, sending emails, using social media, hit that raise hand button under the More tab on the participants. Just let me know that you're doing marketing currently. And I can see a couple people raising their hand right now, right? Almost everyone is doing some form of marketing and they're investing in that. When we say investing, again, it's both time and money, right? So even if you're just doing social media, you can say it's free, I'm telling you it's free, but at the end of the day, we're investing our time in it. We're putting time and effort into it. And what we want to do is make sure we're getting return out of that. Thank you all for raising your hand, by the way. So if you're doing any sort of marketing, we should be talking about personalization, but we're not going to today, but just keep that in mind. And then we really like sites that have repeat visitors. So if people are coming back again and again and again, that's where we can really start to build this database of information about people, how they interacted with our website, what do we know about people, and then tweaking it to improve their experience. There's different types of personalization. So all the way on the one side, we've got rule-based personalization. We've got segments that we can create. We can just say people from here get this experience, people over here get a different experience. There's a bit of a misconception when we start talking about personalization where everyone wants to go to the other side. Everyone wants to talk about predictive, AI-driven personalization, hyper-personalization. And there's actually a great article by Gartner that came out last year where they were talking about how sometimes this leads to poor expectations, poor execution. People kind of bite off more than they can chew, right? So to get to that state of predictive, hyper-personalization, you really need a lot of things to be firing at the same time. We need a lot of data. We need to check a lot of those boxes on that previous slide to know that we can make that work. And it might take us a long time to get to that proof of return on investment. However, we don't have to start there. And I think that's a big challenge for companies is they read the articles, they hear the buzzwords, and they think, I am going to do what the biggest companies in the world are doing, and I'm going to do it on my tiny website and get that same exact result. Everyone should be starting in the same place. We should be mastering the basics of personalization, whether we're talking about A/B testing or personalization. We should be getting good at the basics, and then we should be layering up. We should be leveling up and getting to a better place. We can start at the earliest stages of web development. We know that, just as an example, if we were to try to personalize a welcome message on a website, right? Hopefully everyone's a human. I realize actually looking at it now that that's pretty challenging sometimes to discern bots from humans on a website. But if we start with this baseline, welcome human, you can start to see where we layer on different aspects of things that we know about people. Welcome desktop user, right? And desktop versus mobile is we would never think of building a website today that's not responsive, that doesn't plan that there's going to be two different types of people coming to our website, people on desktop or tablet, people on mobile, right? So we know that these different segments exist, and we can change that experience based off of that. Desktop, mobile, and tablet seems to be one that we almost always solve on the dev side and the design side. But a lot of these other ones are things that we can solve with other tools, personalization tools that we layer on top of the website. We can say, welcome Chicago visitor. We can use geolocation information to know where someone's coming from, and we can use that to show relevant or interesting information. Welcome customer. Have they bought from us before? Welcome email subscriber. This kind of gets back to whether or not they're in our system. Making different tools talk to each other and changing the experience based off of that. Something like welcome Drupal fan, right? So we can monitor what people are doing on our website and say, we think you're a fan of this type of content, so we're going to give you more of this type of content. So based off of your previous behavior, we're going to make some recommendations or change your experience in a way that we hope will improve it. And then lastly, you get to that hyper-personalization, welcome John Mack. And there's certain places where if you got there, you would say, that's exactly what I'm hoping for. You know, I want my doctor's website to know who I am. I want Amazon to remember my last purchase so I can check in on that. But there's also the places where we don't want to get that far. Not every website needs to be at that level. In fact, it's pretty easy for us to pull up social media and find examples of where personalization got weird or got creepy. Right, here's an example from someone who's relearning how to drive, and Amazon's recommending student driver magnets, even though they never searched for them or they never thought that they said it. You can see how it might become spooky. And there's a lot more examples of this. The Target example we know about. All of these things are probably too far down the path of personalization and possibly a sign that you can go too far with this. Let's reel it back in and let's just say we can start personalization with just one segment. So with that in mind, let's flip back to the tips for our designers, for our developers, and for our information architects. Okay. Sometimes we know if you're building a website, maybe you're going to wear all those hats at the same time. You're doing all of the above, or maybe you're playing one of those roles, or maybe you're working with someone that plays one of those roles. So let's start with putting together a website, doing the design for a website. Really, this is all about flexible design. We want to design to give options to the other people that are building the website, the other people that are visiting the website. The question I would pose is, if you knew everything about an individual, how would you change that person's experience? Again, we can talk about personalization. We can say the buzzword. We know the few examples from the Netflixes and the Amazons. We can say, well, they're going to recommend the next in the series, or they're going to recommend a series like that or a product like that. But let's think about our website and say, if we're changing our website, we're changing someone's experience, what are the mechanisms we can use to do that? So if you had perfect information, you could hide the wrong information from our website. We could incorporate things like people's preferences. We can make recommendations about what we think is the next thing someone might like. Again, if I'm reading different articles, I could say, I think this is a similar article about a similar topic, and you might find interest in that. I could incorporate preferences. Right? So when websites are doing this well, you sometimes don't even notice it. I'll give you an example. I logged on to CNN today, and they asked me again if I wanted to sign up for Anderson Cooper's newsletter. If they knew me, if they had perfect information about me, they would know that I've already said no 10 times and that I only get my information from Twitter, which is probably not a good thing to admit, but that you can always get to the news sites from there. We can show better, more relevant information, right? So if I knew exactly who was on my website and I knew everything about them, I could then start to show them exactly what they're looking for. It's getting a little bit more into the predictive. We can simplify the experience. We can start thinking about examples of all of these things and saying, you know, simplifying the experience. If I'm already a customer, I don't want to see a sign up to be a customer button, right? If I'm someone who's been on the website and interacted with that website, I can just hide the things that don't apply to that particular person. We can send the right messages. So there's lots that we can do. And while we don't know everything about everyone, let's assume that at some point we are going to learn some things about some people, right? So we know everything about everyone. We know we're never going to hit that. But we're also not at the place where we create a website, we put it out in the world, and we're done. We have that website out there for a period of time. We're often using tools that will capture information about how people are using it. And if we use a personalization tool, we're capturing information that we can then use to change their experience. So we know that we're going to learn some things about some people. And then the question would be, what do we do with that information? For this, on the design side, it says we need to be able to embrace flexible design principles. Yes, it has to look great, but it also has to be able to change easily. Right? So as we're designing the experience, we're saying this is the ideal homepage. This is what we've been looking for. We should be asking these questions and saying, well, would it still look good if I got rid of this section here? And if I knew that this was the wrong section, if I had some information and I knew that it didn't need to show this to everyone on the website, would it still work if I just took that whole section out? Or what if I grabbed this and I put it on a different page? On the Bounteous website, we had this recommended articles in the homepage, but we started putting that in more places. So on partner pages, we can recommend partner articles. We start to learn about the people on our website, and we can give them more information in different ways than we originally imagined when we built a website. What's another way to show the same content? So again, if you're creating content like blog posts or events or things like that, we've got the long form blog posts. We often will have some sort of summary, a card that we have. How can we show one piece of content 10 different ways? Again, just going back to the fact that we know that we might need to put this somewhere else. We might need to show it on the homepage as a recommended article, or show it as the most recent article that we published. And then we want to make sure that we're giving flexibility to the team that's going to be adding personalization. With imagery, text, hard-coded images and text together are really going to slow us down. If we need to call the design team every time we need to make a tweak, that's really going to put a halt to our personalization process. At Bounteous, we love the Atomic Design by Brad Frost. We've got a great article talking about a living style guide and how that sort of embraces the concepts of atomic design. If you don't know about it, it's pretty simple. It says, let's distill things down to their smallest pieces. So we can take atoms like the search button that you see here. That's one small piece, but we could put that all together and say, create a molecule that includes the title, the input, the button. Say that is our search section, and we can put that in different places, move it around the website, put it here, put it there, put it in the footer, put it in the header. We can then create organisms like the header bar across the top, and then that can be placed into layouts, which then we build into pages. It's a real quick summary of atomic design. But the whole point of this is that by thinking in this manner, it's really enabling all of these other things downstream that we're not even thinking about. If I can grab that search box and show that in a modal, or show that somewhere else on the website, based off of some information I've collected about some individual, that's really going to empower your personalization teams to get things done. Often when we're thinking about personalization, we're thinking about what are we going to add to the website. So most of the personalization tools that are buzzy and trendy are client-side. There are some more expensive server-side personalization tools. The client-side ones load asynchronously while the page is loading, and it can swap content in and out. It can add content. Acquia Lift is one that we use a lot. And so if we have two different pieces of content inside of our Drupal environment, we can feed that through Content Hub into Lift, and then we can swap a piece of content on the site. So thinking about this and saying, how will we add more information to the site? What are the mechanisms I have to change that experience or to add a different message to the site? I'll give you an example. On the top of our blog posts on Bounteous.com, we actually have a hidden banner that we can turn on or off, and we can populate it with anything we want. And we built that into the website before we even knew what we were going to do with it. Before we built the logic to power that, we have an event feed, and we thought we might pull in from the RSS feed. We used that bar, though, through Lift or through Optimize. We can populate in relevant things like our Chicago Google trainings. We show that to people who come to our website from Chicago. Flyouts and overlays, right? So if we have an idea of something to share with someone, we need to have a way to put that into the website that is not too interruptive or disruptive. And so there's a way, I'll show you an example in a second about some flyouts or overlays, some examples of how other sites are doing this. And then we can always try to embed that somewhere in the page. Challenges with embedding it in the page are, again, come with the client side, but there's ways to fix that, and that's more on the dev side. Gaurav was asking about server-side personalization tools. I think Optimizely has an example of that. We spend most of our time on the client side, thinking about how we can use the information that we're getting from people coming in, cookies, marketing tools, and things like that. So we're mostly using client-side personalization tools at Bounteous, but some of the bigger websites would probably prefer server-side for behind-the-scenes, high-load personalization items. Here's a quick example of adding content to a website. So again, like on the Bounteous site, we can add this breaking news strip inside of an article, or it just kind of pushes the content down from the top of the page. We can have things fly in or pop up. I know everyone hates the modal pop-ups, right? I just complained about the CNN one. Didn't think I was going to use this example. But we tried this with a newsletter sign up, and we saw a 250% increase in subscriptions. And there's ways to do this thoughtfully and with empathy, right? So we're not going to spam you. We're not going to hit you every single time you load a page. And we're also not going to, the way we did is we made it really clear there's a big X. It's really easy to close. It doesn't give you that guilt factor where you have to click, I hate saving money, and then it closes, right? If you do it in a way that's thoughtful and you're just saying, right, if I'm trying to give you an offer, if you want to sign up, it's a great way to do it. And then we also offered a couple other options for them to click into. Like, no, email's not my preferred method. Great, here's 2 other options for you to choose from. So we had really great case studies around that. And then we've got embedded content, and that's where it's going to be inside the page and pulling some sort of relevant content. You can see an example here. We've got CNN going across the top here. We've got pop-ups coming on a website. Amazon's making recommendations. It's just one example. So as we design the website, we can be planning for this. We can be saying, how will we add information to the website? Or we can add information that we know might change later on. Okay, so we have to say, this is what we're going to launch with, but there may be a future state that's going to involve extra information. I love this motto, right? Make it dumb. Make it dumb first, and then we'll figure out how to make it better later. So if we're dealing with any sort of process, it's like, yes, I know we can automate our Salesforce to this and da-da-da-da. Do it manually first so we can prove that it's going to work, and then we're going to figure out ways to make that better. So, adding a greeting to your website that says, hey, welcome to the website is a simple way to do that. And then we know we can come back later and maybe make that a little bit better. Hey, did you know we have a sale going on right now, right? There's ways that we can put information on the page and say, here are our 3 most recent blog posts. That sounds like a pretty thing that we could add to a website. And then we can just think in the back of our mind, later when we get to personalization, that might be, hey, here are 3 recommended blog posts. So one is a straight feed, and the other is going to use some sort of information, some info that we learned about some person to make that decision. So those are our tips for designers, short and sweet. Let's talk about the developers. We've got some really good questions. I'm going to save some of those for the Q&A. But let's talk about devs for a quick second. Let's talk about how we can build it once, and we can make it in a way that people can then use it from then on. Again, we're not just building to specs. We're trying to build a system that other people will be able to use. And really the goal is to not call the dev team. So let's think about it this way. Who's going to be the next person to edit the website? Often content or personalization falls on the marketing team or a different agency. And what we want them to be empowered to do is take it to the next level, right? So here's a great example. This is what happens when our team builds a website. And then when they hand it off to me, this is what it turns into, right? So we can take the perfectly organized thing that is created and we just make a big mess out of it. And we start dragging things and changing things. So there needs to be some control and there needs to be some barriers that are built in. But at the same time, you want to make a system that is encouraging people to adapt it, tweak it, and use what you've built. We have this conversation with companies all the time. For personalization to be successful, the stakeholders need to develop a fast and flexible cadence. So I know everyone has a different timeline for how quickly they can get dev from QA all the way up to the live site. You know, typically a 2-week sprint might be too slow for a personalization cadence. We know for one of our larger customers, we're meeting, I think, twice a week. We launch a new experiment, a new personalization once a week, and we review that results at the end of the week. We're going really quickly with a lot of these tests and experiments and personalization items. And then we're monitoring them, and then we're changing them for the next week. You've heard the stories about Spotify or Netflix and how many they're running at a single time. So we need to be able to do this quickly. We need to be flexible. We need to say this isn't working or we need to tweak it. What that really means is that we can't always call the dev team. So we should be able to do a lot on the website, and there should be certain things. And we say, you know what, I do need a new module. I am going to put in a ticket. We're going to go through the whole process, spec it out, bring in the design team. But really, we want to be using the tools that have been created to tweak it, to change it, to keep it moving. So if we're talking about customizing existing modules, tweaks to the site layout, swapping things around just to see if they work better. I know on our training site right now, we have a big map at the top and we have our list of our trainings at the bottom. That's really important during the year when we have people that are looking for a training right next to them. But now we're starting to rethink that, and we're going to need to change that where our trainings, our digital offerings are listed at the top and the map is at the bottom, because that's no longer the most relevant piece of information to share. So we need to be able to do that without necessarily waiting 2 weeks for that to come back around. Colors, text, hiding things, showing things. We need to make a system that we can use that is really flexible. And then we will call the dev team when we need to for the really important things, the new stuff. I want to call out consider all of the downstream effects. Okay, so here is our superhero team. And if you think about who all works on a website, first of all, this is, in case anyone doesn't know, this is, I believe, Marvel, the Avengers. One of my goals for my quarantine time is to get through all of the movies. I have not watched any of them. I think I just started this, so I think I'm up to like the 3rd movie of the 23. So I'm live streaming with a buddy, and we're trying to get all the way through them. He's seen them all. I haven't seen them all. I don't even know who all these people are. Okay. Think about the team that is working on your website as a superhero team. We've got dev designers. We've got all the people that are building the website. And then there's this whole team that's going to run your website. And that might be your analytics team, your personalization team, your marketing team. And again, maybe that's just one person who wears 3 hats. But that team needs to be able to do their jobs as well. So all the work that we do, if we're really thoughtful about it, and if we know what's coming next, we can plan for that and say, I'm going to make it easier for them down the road. This is an interesting one. I don't know if anyone sat in on Brian's talk earlier today. Brian Perry was talking about CSS in JavaScript. And one of the CSS and JavaScript options he showed it was in order to control scope, it made these really unique and ugly looking class names. That is exactly the opposite of what I would recommend. In this particular scenario, when we're thinking about the downstream effects, our analytics tools, all of our client side tools like analytics, testing, are going to use things like CSS selectors to make it easy for us to say, I want to know how many people are clicking on that button. I'm just going to put a trigger on there. I want to watch to see how many people are clicking that. Often we're going to use a CSS selector to do that, and really it's going to be easier when we have unique IDs, class names that are human readable. We can say, I know exactly what I'm grabbing with this. These two examples are from Acquia Lift on the left, Google Optimize on the right. They both also have CSS selectors. Acquia also gives you the option to embed some code on the website and say, this is the thing that I want to focus on. But if you remember from the last slides, that would involve me going back to the dev team and asking them to then put some code on the website so that I am now able to run a personalization campaign. And that's really contrary to what we're hoping to do here. So if at all possible, depending on how you're put together and what tools you're using, we love class names that are human readable, right? I should be able to look at that and know exactly what I'm looking at. I'm talking about being friendly to the people you work with. How about being friendly with other tools? Okay, so there's lots of ways to add relevant information to the page that other tools can ingest and use to make decisions. We've got things called data layers, whether you're working with Adobe or Google. We're going to organize this information, put it in a structured format, and put that on the page so that when another tool is added, they're able to ingest all of that information that I care about. Think about your user. What do we know about them? We don't want to put in things like their name or email or social security number. That's not what we're talking about. But if you know that they're logged in and they're a user, or if you know that they're a former customer, that information can be added to the page. And then when we hand it off to the analytics team, they can ingest that information and track that. Or our personalization team, this is an example from Optimize, they can say, I want to show a particular experiment of personalization to anyone that's on a blog post tagged with Google Tag Manager. Right? So we can be friendly with the other tools as well and make that easier for everyone else to use that information. Modular design, we talked about it on the atomic design side, but again, if we can build this into the website so that whoever's the content editor, whoever's the marketing team can take it, grab it, move it, put it everywhere else, it's going to make everyone's lives easier. So we want things to be reusable, self-contained, customizable. The tweaking is really where we see a lot of time going into it. And then further down the line, if you are going to start thinking about personalization, your dev team absolutely should be involved. And if we know they're going to be involved earlier, that's when we can start talking about unique things to personalization. One of the challenges with client sides, the flicker that might happen whenever a client-side tool tries to load as a page is loading, making sure assets are loading properly and in the right order, thinking about that QA and the sprints that we're going to put this in and whether or not personalization should even be a part of that. These are all things that we want to start talking about as a team. When we think about team, again, when we think about the personalization team, we usually try to make a team that is built up of dev, design, marketing, and analytics. Those are all of the key stakeholders that would be involved in the ability to launch a personalization, the intent behind some sort of personalization campaign, the measurement of whether or not it's successful, and whether or not it looks great, right? So a lot of things from the dev side. Again, if you follow all of these advice, all of the instructions that we're putting here, even if you don't do personalization at all, the end result is that you have a really great website. So all of this is just about being thoughtful and being purposeful in how we put it together, specifically in ways that are going to help other people who then try to get to the website. Let's talk about IA. We've got so much information on the website. I think one of the questions here is it important to use data to inform content creation, or should content be targeted? There's a lot of different ways that we can use information, use data, but one of the first things we should do is capture it. And so when we talk about, this is my tag everything. Get it? Again, give me claps in the channel. I'm missing out on this like audience participation. So this is, get it? It's tagging, okay. What do I know about the pages and the content on the website? Okay, so when people are creating pages, they usually come in with some sort of thought process behind it. What we want to make use of is taxonomy. We want to use as much as we can to force people to classify the content on the website. I would say most people are really not doing this unless someone else is asking them to do it. We can be that person. When someone hands us, some content and says, put this on the website, we can force them to say, well, before we do that, we have 6 fields we need to fill out in order for us to quantify this, in order for us to tag it, and then in order for us to make that information available to all the other tools. So we want to overuse a tagging structure that creates stronger content. It can communicate that substance and intent to all of our other tools that we're using. All right, so simple, most people know about tags, keywords. I'd say almost every piece of content could be tagged with usually 2 different items. So there's themes, and there can be products or something more specific. If you're selling something, if you're a B2B, B2C, right, there's the very specific thing you're selling, but that usually belongs to a category or a theme. In this case, thinking about writing blogs on the Bounteous website, we might be writing about personalization, but we're going to tag all of the different technologies we use inside of personalization. So this can be 2 different sets of taxonomy and tags that can then be put into the data layer, shared with our other tools, things like that. This one's pretty easy. I think a lot of people are using keywords already. You see those show up at the top of a blog post, and you can usually click on that and sort someone's content library based off of these tags. So we're building in a bit of functionality. We're building in a bit of logic and the ability for people to group things together. So this is great for the experience on the website. This is also really important for that other stuff. Learning what people like. I can't know what they like unless I can ingest that information and make sense of it. Tools like Acquia Lift, right? They can take in these keywords, and then they can say, well, you read 6 Drupal blogs and you only read 3 Google blogs. So we're going to say your favorite topic is Drupal. They're going to do all the work for you if we just pipe in the right information. So that's why we want to talk about these things very early on in the site building process. Who is this content for? Right? So as we're writing this is often you have this idea in your head, or the author's thinking about it. We're doing this for a very particular reason. We're hoping to hit a very particular audience. Track that. Put that into some sort of taxonomy. Make someone choose from a dropdown and say, well, it's got to be one of these 5. And again, that's going to help us put that into other places. And we can start to say, we think this person fits into this model based off of what they're interested in, based off of what they're reading on the website. And then we've also got sections of the site or content types. This one's pretty interesting. We can understand what type of content it is based on where it's located. So our service section or our blog section, about us pages, contact pages. We have all these different sections of the website. It'd be great to see that information, know what sections people are reading the most, or what particular content type is being consumed. When people say things like, I have a ton of content on my website, what we want to say back is, well, what's the most valuable content? How can you prove that? How can you say that this is more valuable content than that content? There's a couple different ways to do it. Google Analytics has a built-in page score that will take the value of a session and spread it out over all of the pages that were viewed before that. But often we have a bit of an internal idea about how valuable a particular page is. So for instance, if I have a website and I want people to come and read blogs, that's a great thing to do. I want people to do that. I also want people to check out my services and know that I build websites and I do all these other things. So that's a more valuable page. When we say how valuable, we can create a bit of a relative scale here. And we can say something like, our services pages are worth twice as much value to us than a blog page. We know someone is at this section of the website or on this particular page, they're a little bit more valuable to us than what our eventual goal is for our particular site. So if we're trying to get people to fill out a form or buy something, there's these different pages that they hit that can be indicators of how close they're getting to hitting that particular conversion. So content scoring is a super awesome thing to do when we can do it right. And it really forces our teams to sit and think about how we're organizing the content on the website, what is most valuable. We did a really fun project on one of our websites where we could measure how many people went from a low score page to a high score page. So this concept of up-leveling people and saying, we get a ton of traffic to our blog, but we need to get more of those people to go to that next section, to invest a little bit more time or read a little more critically. And then we can measure that and say, is that working? Here's an example from Lyft where it tracks that and it scores people. And then at the end of the day, we can take that list and say, well, show me the most valuable people on the website, and let's change their experience a little bit. right? So we know that based off of their score, these people are only ever going to read blogs. And so we should be giving them the best blogs and more blogs, and all they want is blogs. But these people over here have the potential to go into something else. And so maybe we're going to hit them with a little bit of a different message, try to send them down a little bit of a different journey. So we talked about design, we talked about dev, we talked about IA. Let's talk a little bit about what's next. And I think we're getting close to the end of time, which seems like we're doing pretty good. So personalization, we said it's great for sites with a lot of traffic, sites with a lot of content, e-commerce sites. I'm going to come back to the sites that use marketing channels. I did a webinar with Acquia last year. Eric Fullerton and I talked about this and saying what people tend to do is get stuck in the ideal or stuck in this vision of personalization. Again, it can be a little bit messier than that. We want to get people in there and starting to use personalization tools. Get in there, start seeing what it's like. We can do a 50-50 split. We can say these are East Coast, West Coast. This is a Pittsburgh audience. We're going to give them a little bit of a different experience. Our marketing channels are really great because they tell us exactly how someone got to our website. So if we're practicing, if we're using best practices around marketing, I can say these are people that I drove to my website from Google Ads. And I know they clicked on this particular campaign, so I actually know what they're interested in. I know the words they clicked on, and so when they get to that website, I should make that as relevant as possible. If I know that they're coming from my member newsletter, someone that's already subscribed or already purchased, why shouldn't I be hitting them with a sign-up message as soon as they get to the website? So if I'm tagging my content and they're coming to the website, they click through that email, they landed on my homepage, I can use different tools to say, look at that URL, know how they got here, and then make that experience match the message that they saw in their inbox, in social media, in a Google search. And so marketing channels are the very first place that we can start with personalization because we're already spending time, we're already spending money on this. We can just carry through that experience from outside our website to our website. I know I wasn't going to pitch you too hard on personalization, but two great tools to think about. Google Optimize, that's a freemium model. It's so easy to set up and so easy to get work loaded on your website and just start practicing, just start trying to use it. Acquia Lift, we love that with Drupal sites. The way that it feeds content from a Drupal site into Lift's Content Hub is amazing and makes it super easy for us to change experiences on there. And with all of that, right, the whole point of today is let's design, build, and architect websites thoughtfully that are thinking about what comes next. And if you're handing off a website to your stakeholder, your client, you're saying, hey, I built you this website. I did this for you. And by the way, you're ready to go. You're signed up, everything is good. You can take this and you can immediately start doing any sort of personalization you want on this because we were thoughtful in how we put it together. That might be a great segue for you to do that for your client. That might be a great chance for your client to then take that and run with it. Or maybe it's going to be handed off to someone else. But if we think about it, if we plan for these things up front, we're going to save ourselves a lot of time and effort when we start to get these requests later on. And here's my personalized response based on me. So thank yins. Yins in Pittsburgh is how we say y'all or you guys. Thank you. Any questions? We've got some time for Q&A. I'm not going to miss the opportunity to plug the contribution day, which is this Saturday. And then we also have a feedback form. I'm going to leave it here. And then if there are questions, I'm happy to take those as well. Thank you all for coming. I'll give you guys a clap in the panelist channel because you guys are awesome. Questions, I think you can unmute, you can chat. There's a lot of different things.
Thanks, John. What I'll like to do is just check the chat and then I can unmute if there's a question.
Yeah, I'll go to Kamal Preet's question if that's okay. So question was, is it more important to use data to inform content creation or should content be targeted? I would say that this is a kind of everything is an it depends. So there's not a lot of perfect answers in marketing. I would say that content creation should match what you're trying to get people to do, right? So if you're trying to get eyeballs, if you're trying to get people coming to your website, then it's a perfect way to do it is to start mining your data and saying, well, what works? What gets people here already? What are people spending time on? And then that's the type of content you continue to produce. However, sometimes you're going to write content that doesn't do well, but that means you're just going to use it in a different way, right? So I know that if this is a piece of content that ties to my mission or my vision, or I know that it's supporting a particular service or offering that I'm really trying to get up off the ground, I'm going to have to use this content in a different way. I'm going to have to send it in emails or show it on the homepage or do something extra because it might not get that organic traffic right away. So data can be sort of double-edged. If you only follow the data, you're probably going to miss out on some of your core business objectives. And then you're going to end up maybe even incorporating some of the bad practices that we don't like people to do, which is the clickbait articles and things like that. So you want to be smart with your data. You want to be tracking it. You want to be understanding it. And it's a lot easier if you just take, two different types of content and compare how did this type of content do? Can I prove that long articles are better than short articles? These two articles seem really similar. I'm going to try to figure out why one did better than the other. I hope that answered your question.
What I'm going to do is ask you to raise your hand in the channel, and then I can unmute you. Otherwise, John, you're doing great. Just keep going through the questions in the chat. That's working well.
Sure. So David is asking, I'd love to hear more about the success criteria beyond this thing appeared for a user. I think what you're asking is how do we measure that this is working, right? And that's the Gartner article that I referenced said, depending on what site you have, you may need to change your expectations. If we're doing something like A/B testing, it's a little bit easier for us to put a discrete thing right at the end of it and say, this is what we're trying to fix. These are two different ways that we're attempting to fix it, and we're going to know which one is better because we're measuring it. Personalization, if you have a big site, you have a lot of content, you have an e-commerce website, we can usually tie it back to a very discrete metric and say, we are trying to increase this, and we're trying to do it in this way. But often, personalization is also used just to improve your brand experience or improve your loyalty. I know when I go to Amazon, it says, hello, John. It's not going to make me buy anything more, but it has a bit of a connotation to it. So what we try to do, though, is we try to tie it to marketing. We do a little bit of A/B testing. We do control groups, and we say, we're going to send a campaign in here, and we're going to show some people the personalized experience and some people not the personalized experience. Sometimes you just do personalization because it's the right thing to do, and it's going to improve the experience for the end user. Especially when we start talking about things like hiding the wrong information or respecting people's preferences. Those are things we should be doing anyway. We just have greater capability now with a tool that is going to allow us to change that. Gaurav, I'd say maybe we can chat later, or you can shoot me an email. You're curious about server-side personalization versus client-side. I think one of the huge things that I love about client-side personalization is the flexibility that we have with the client-side. The ability to go and launch a change to your website in minutes. I know with the coronavirus, for example, right, we could see how long it took certain people to update their website, to change their messaging, to do things like that. It could be really easy for someone to go in and launch a pop-up or a banner or a message or change their homepage or hide their event schedule or anything like that in minutes, depending on their setup. So the client-side tools are often cheaper, they're often easier to use, and there's a little bit of a lower tech curve to adopt them. I'd say server-side are just usually bigger companies that are better staffed. Anyone else with questions? And again, right, the whole point of today isn't that you should all be doing personalization. Not every website needs personalization. But the qualities that we look for whenever we're adding personalization to a website, we go back and we say, well, what's available for us to use? What sort of data do we have? How are we going to be able to grab items and move them and change them and tweak them? And we're often in the code and we're looking at classes and ID names and we're saying, I can't use this. I need to do dev work in order to even let me get started to do the personalization work. Lauren's got a great question. How do you ensure personalization isn't keeping people in their bubbles? Like, I noticed you came from a makeup website, so you probably aren't interested in articles on engineering. That's a really great question. I would say that when we think about how other sites are doing this, we think about how we can add personalization. There's sometimes the ability to swap content, right? So I think I mentioned the example where the 3 recommended articles, we could swap that based off of what they want. there's a couple of fallback methods, and there's a couple of different ways you can do that gradually. So probably a better way to do that would be to leave the default options there and add another section beneath it that said recommended options. You'll see that on an Amazon page or most e-commerce sites, there's 5 different boxes. There's recommended for you, people similar to you bought. We think you should do this. Our brand partners have paid us to put this here, right? So we can see all these different options and we can measure which ones do better. So Google Analytics has a free tool called Enhanced E-commerce. It's built into it, which basically says we can track exactly the 3rd item in the 2nd recommendation zone. That's your most popular one, and that drove the most pull-through revenue. So we can track and measure which ones are working. I think that's probably more of an internal thing when we talk about what is the intent of personalization, what are we thinking about, how are we putting together a campaign. That's where I would address your question, which is we just need to be thoughtful about it. We need to be aware of the bias that we might tend to put on top of it. Can the personalized pages still appear in organic search results, or can we only deep link them from our marketing campaigns? Oh, sorry, I missed the beginning, sorry. Any idea how well Google handles client-side Ajax-loaded pages these days? Is the crawler able to run and parse JavaScript effectively now? We are still going to, most often Google's going to grab the core content on the page. So it can still, if we have like a JavaScript framework where like the page is sort of loaded after the fact, like it can still handle that. It's going to execute JavaScript. It's going to see what that page is. But what it's not going to do is usually take one of your variations or one of your personalized pages. So the organic search results should always be that sort of basic and most pleasing to the most number of people version of the page. And then the personalized could be deep linked from a marketing campaign, or it could be based off of observed behavior, or it could be based off of a number of different signals that could put together to change that experience. I'm not sure if I'm getting exactly to your question, but in general, Google's going to show you the base page and not the personalized version of the page. Also because there are going to be 18 different versions or 100 different versions of how that page could look based off of a number of different factors. We're back to the makeup example here. If we had personalization for makeup-loving engineers, that wouldn't be discoverable through organic. No, you wouldn't get all the different variations. So if I had one page with a couple different variations on it for makeup lovers who also like engineers, makeup lovers who don't like engineering, makeup lovers who like football, right? By creating all those different personalizations, those are only going to be on the personalization side. You're not going to get 5 different indexed pages that all resolve to the same page but have different experiences. Okay. This has been super fun. I think the Zoom thing is pretty great. I don't know what you guys think about it throughout today, but it's been really fun to watch people collaborating and communicating, and the speakers have been doing a really great job. So thank you all for coming and chatting. I'm happy to stick around. I don't know if there's anyone else after me. I'm guessing there will be someone in the next 5 minutes, but
actually this is the last one, so we can hang out a little bit more, but keep the questions coming.
Oh, I think it's just turning into angry people now. People are not happy about my taco comment. They hope I have better tacos in my life. I think the travel to the Southwest is what we've noted. So when that's an option, I'm going to head there and get some tacos. I did have a great breakfast taco in Austin, I'll tell you that. What do you think, Andy?
I'll let you call it if you can take more hits on your tacos, by all means, but you've done really well, so it's your call.
That gets into the recording, and I'm going to stop the recording now. I'm happy to hang out for a while. This is my last thing for the day.
Let's stop the recording and then we'll hang out. Thanks everybody for attending. We will be here tomorrow and contributing on Saturday. Please give your feedback to John's session on the screen. It's mid.camp/6400. Thanks everybody.